It's been a year and a half since I've recorded and released an episode of Galaxy Tenants. Though a lot has changed in that time, one thing has not. I love producing these episodes. I love the conversations that we have, I love the music that we feature, and I love this medium. The process of piecing together each episode is very meaningful to me. I hope you stay tuned to Galaxy Tenants, and I hope you enjoy these upcoming episodes. I listened back through some of the most interesting episodes from the first 50, and the conversation with Andrew Wyatt was one of my absolute favorites. The once Baptist preacher was shaken off of his path by Burning Man and a strong dose of LSD, only to find a new life through his metaphysical and literal desert rebirth. His photos are some of the most incredible that my eyes have seen, and we're lucky to have him contributing to Music Marauders. I'm fascinated by his stories, which are both heartwarming and very human. If you've yet to listen to our first conversation, it's Galaxy Tenants episode 47, and you can do so now wherever you get your podcasts. I hope you enjoy our second conversation with Andrew Wyatt. Well, I'm sure glad I did that and didn't not record this.
It was the greatest conversation that never was.
To be candid, I consume a lot of cannabis, and so I have to be delicate with every action I take. How has everything been with you, bud? We haven't talked in a year and a half, and the reason I wanted to revisit this conversation before any other conversation in getting back to this is because I enjoyed your story above all other 49 episodes that I did as a part of Galaxy Tenants.
Wow. Well, thank you. I do appreciate that.
In listening back to our previous conversation, there's a lot of things that I want to follow up on and dive deeper into. One of those things is I'd be curious as to your perspective of how your photography has changed and progressed since your early years in the early 2000s in Jackson Hole.
Oh, gosh, a lot, actually. I feel like when I look back at some of the work I was doing back in those days, I always think, well, that kid has talent. And you can see the talent, but it's not in every photo. Whereas now I feel I have a better idea of how to compose photos, but also how to edit them too. I was one of these kind of people that when there was an editing tool that came along, I always wanted to take it for a spin, sometimes to the detriment of the images themselves. Right now, I feel like I am doing the highest quality work that I've ever done since I've started.
How has your perspective of the craft changed?
Well, I think the realization, here's the thing, it's so funny because for years, I often wondered, well, why aren't more people seeing like this great quality work that I have? And certainly as time has gone on, more and more people have become introduced to my work. But also I feel like what I've just understood is that photography is the same way it is about living your individual life. What I do is but one drop in a very large ocean, a very, very large ocean. I mean, just if you broke down the number of photographers on assignment at Burning Man in any given year, in addition to Burning Man's team photographers, and then you multiply that by the number of phones, it's infinitesimal in size, just even 1 year.
It's daunting.
So my perspective is I can't really worry about what gets seen and what doesn't. I can't worry about the fact that there are so many other people in so many different other places than I ever get to. I just have to be grateful that I have the opportunity to do it still, and that I am producing the best work that I have produced since I've started.
I look at a lot of photographers' photos after Burning Man. I go through thousands of my own on my shitty cell phone. And Of all of the photographs that I view and everything I look through, yours stand out to me. I look
Oh,
forward to seeing yours.
boy, thank you. I'm grateful to hear that. The gratitude part is the part that I've learned, though, I feel like, that I didn't have before. It's not just in terms of taking a compliment when somebody gives it to you, but it's the gratitude that you just get to do your thing. And it's not about what other people are doing or not doing. It's that you're there and you get to live it and you get to do it. And the chips fall where they fall. It was so funny. I heard someone come out of the desert and they were joking with friends of theirs about how they got delayed coming out and they actually spent extra days there, like a lot of us did, that we weren't expecting. And yet her first thought was, I can't believe it's already over. She had that tone as if to say that, damn, I'm just so disappointed that it's gone. And then one of her friends responded by saying something along the lines of, yeah, but aren't you glad that it did happen? To me, when I heard that, I felt like that was something that I could reflect on, because it's not about the fact that, yeah, I mean, all good things come to an end. Experiences like that don't last forever. It's not a sustainable community, but isn't it awesome that it did happen and you were there when it happened? That kind of thing. And
I
that's the
want
way I
to
feel about my photography now, too, is that I'm not a drone operator. I might not ever be a drone operator. And that's where a lot of photography is going. But when you're like myself and I have cerebral palsy that affects my right hand, I actually shoot. I use my left hand as index finger to shoot with. It would take some work to get to that point. And I'm just always going to be a boot on the ground. And isn't that awesome?
I'm grateful that you are. From when you first attended Burning Man in 2001, I think you said it was, how has the event, the city, and the actual population, not necessarily the volume of the population, but the people that attend, how have those things changed? Let's say leading up to 2019's burn, and then we'll dive into the next couple.
The one thing when people ask me that question is I take a step backward in answering that question by prefacing it with the thing about Burning Man that's different from any other event. They don't like to use the word festival, but we'll just say event, is that you literally choose your own adventure. There isn't a schedule, telling you to be at the main stage at 7 o'clock for Galactic. So anytime I have gone to Burning Man, I've accepted that. And the thing about it is you literally do choose your own adventure. You choose the places that you go and the people that you want to be around. And nobody's tapping you on the shoulder telling you to do something different. So for me, I would say in my experience, not a lot has changed. I mean, certainly back when I went in 2001, it was a smaller event. I think there was somewhere around 25,000 people, and now it's 75,000. Certainly, I would say that more people that went, there was a greater percentage of people that were just dedicated to the community. Whereas now, leading up to the lockdown year, there were people there that were Instagrammers that were there for just the party's sake. I remember my wife and we were at this beautiful metal sculpture. Laura Kempton used to do a series of words in large scale metal format. And one year she brought back the Love sculpture, which she originally brought in 2011. And Greta and I were I didn't have my camera out. I wasn't even taking a picture of it. We were just kind of like walking around it and just inspecting it a little closer. And these two kids were whizzing past us on bikes. And the girl says to her friend, hey, should we get a picture here at this one? And he just turned, without batting an eyelash, he says to her, oh, I've already Instagrammed that. And they were gone. So that was pretty surprising. I'm like, Well, that's not the way that I look at the art here, but okay. So there is that element that was creeping in. There were definitely more, it felt like to me that there were more instances of theft and people tearing other people's property apart, but still not on a large scale. And that's what the other thing that I tell people is that you take any typical city in the United States that has the population of 75,000 and look at the amount of crime that happens or deaths that happen in the span of a week, I can guarantee you the stats are far greater in any other American city other than Black Rock.
I think that gets overlooked a lot. I think that people latch on to kind of those talking points of someone died at Burning Man this year. And it's, you have to remind them that first off, that many people, like you mentioned, and then that many people in a desert. What's a city that has 75,000 people in it?
I don't know, but what I do know is that Black Rock City becomes the third largest city in the state of Nevada. So that would put it behind Las Vegas and Reno for sure.
So something just under the size of like Davenport or Albany, which is
Right.
fucking mind blowing. I mean, that's massive. And the infrastructure that goes into that. And
well, one of the conversations that I had is I thought it rather interesting and a little amusing that when the rains came this year and the gates got shut down, there was such an immediate reaction, it seemed, as we were getting told from the outside, that for people to make the assumption that something terrible like mass deaths had happened, and I feel like part of what happens, whether it be in the media, whether it just be in our culture in general, is that I think there's a lot of people that want to see Burning Man fail in some way. And they want to see people who go to Burning Man as failures. And so when remnants of a hurricane pass over Black Rock City, I do feel like, at least latently, there's this mental process that happens collectively where people want to assume the worst immediately. And it's only later when people like us come out that all of a sudden you're like, no, there was no cases of Ebola. There weren't any mass deaths. There were only actually 2 deaths that I know of for sure that happened for the entire time.
mm-hmm.
People were not pooping on top of each other. I mean, it's just funny that what you have to immediately just sort from, because I do feel that Burning Man culturally, even though it has had such a huge effect on our culture, I think mostly in a positive way, there is that desire for people who do not know what it is to interpret it in the most negative way possible.
I have friends who just absolutely shit on it, even in the good years. And I find myself being so defensive of something that when I went there, I even wanted to dislike. I just, much like you kind of alluded to in our previous conversation, I wanted to go there. I wanted to see it one time and I wanted to be done with it. And that didn't happen for me.
My dog is howling at the fire truck outside.
That's adorable.
It was really darn cute, actually.
That was really cute.
She
I'm going to
doesn't
leave
do
that
it
in.
every time, but that was so sweet.
I wanted to go there and I wanted to dislike it and be done with it and just do this favor for my girlfriend at the time and just kind of check it off our list. But I fell in love with it and I find myself being so defensive of it. And people who have not been cannot grasp what it is precisely. And even more so for folks who've gone to music festivals and only have that perspective, it's hard to explain to them what this is because they only have this singular perspective of what a music festival could be. So
Right.
There's so many challenges that come with that. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people do want Burning Man to fail, which I actually think helps fuel the fire of creativity and the desire to get the job done for those who do attend and who are involved.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I was thinking about too was that for those people who do want it to fail, it goes to, I feel like, a more general thing that may just be happening in our culture right now, but probably has always been a part of our culture, is I feel like even more our country than in others, we have a hard time dealing with things we don't understand or things that we haven't experienced firsthand. And it goes to the cultural tug of war that's happening in our country right now over just being able to accept other people's differences. And Burning Man is one of those things that's perceived as being different. And so there is this almost knee jerk reaction to want to knock it over. Our
I think
country
that's,
doesn't deal with difference
yeah.
very well.
No, it's, everybody has made an enemy of someone that they don't agree with. And the differences are really important to have. And those conversations are important to have. And the experiences are important to have. However, I've tried to drag so many of my friends who disagree with me to Burning Man, and it has been a pain in the ass to drag them to the event. And I've got one on the fence for when we go back that has been very critical. And I hope that he changes his tune after he sees it. I don't know how you could not.
Well, but so one of the things that I do think, now I remember back in the early years, I would come back from Burning Man and I would just encourage everybody, you got to go, you got to do this. And now I don't do that so much anymore because it's not for everyone. I remember I was camping with, it wasn't a friend of mine, but I was a part of a theme camp with a larger group. And there was this woman who was brought into our camp by a fellow campmate, and her experience of festivals were strictly music festivals, and she had one of the worst times of her life. And I sat down and talked with her about it, which was really important. I feel like too that somebody could just listen to her perspective. And what she said was that nobody was telling her what to do, and that was very confusing and very disorienting, on top of the dust storms and the crazy physical conditions of being in the desert. And to me, that's really telling, because it is something that I keep in the back of my mind now. I do try to encourage people to go, but I do always preface it with, it's not for everybody. I mean, there's a reason why there's a bumper sticker on the bar of our camp that says, my vacation is your worst nightmare, because for some people it would be.
It's really
I
beautiful.
understand that.
I think it's fucking beautiful. I've always wanted to take my parents. It's like I feel like I have like a whiteboard and I'm like, drawing out and why they should go to Burning Man. And I've spent a lot of time showing them videos and stuff. And then after the last couple of years of hearing about a lot of people's experiences and then the weather scenarios at Burning Man, I have decided maybe I won't try to convince them to go to Burning Man anymore. I just think that it's not for everybody, and those kind of scenarios, especially for your first experience out there, might be a little bit much.
It's so funny. So Greta and I got legally married at Burning Man in 2015. Nobody on my side of the family was like, should I buy a ticket? And it was very, very sweet. It was a very cute moment. Greta's mom, after a number of weeks had gone by, finally is talking to her on the phone and says, should I buy a ticket? And Greta smiled and said, oh, thank you for asking, but probably not, But as soon as I say that, we have camp members who have 3 generations of people, grandparents, parents, and child, that all go out together. And the grandfather is a pilot that flies in and out of Black Rock City.
That's pretty cool.
There's that too.
So I have a cool experience in that when I met my wife, her father was one of the county commissioners for Burning Man. So we attended and saw it kind of through a different light. In the beginning, it was really cool to have who's now my father-in-law be somebody who was super down for something like this taking place in a conservative space where there was a lot of people pushing back against this. Even though I think he's a conservative individual, he had the peace of mind to say that this isn't a bad thing. This is a good thing. And it was something that he saw as progressive for the region, which I think it's really cool. And years later, after he retired from being county commissioner, he and my mother-in-law both joined us for, I think, a couple of burns just as attendees, and they brought their motorhome out, and it was really special. And what's also special is having a location just a couple of hours from the burn to land at and shower and spread all of our gear out and recover for a couple of days. That's a super crucial part to our personal experience. And maybe I'm a little bit of a prima donna in that regard. Maybe I'm a sparkle pony, but here we are.
And one of the things that I was going to add too is that when we have those of us that have gone to Burning Man and had good experiences, or in my case, a life changing experience, we do feel very protective and defensive. And that was, I actually thought about writing a piece for Music Marauders coming out of the desert. But one reason why I didn't was because I do feel like those of us that are protective of our experience there, the reaction is to be defensive. And there was so much ink being spilled from people that were exaggerating from the outside, not knowing what was going on. And then there was this other pull in the other direction, really hard, with people who were trying to defend what was actually happening on the ground. And it does feel like a tug of war kind of experience. And when I came out, I felt like that just presenting my photos without any more words, because there were so many words that were flying around after this year, more than any other year in the past, that it was just kind of like, how about putting the brakes on the words? you know?
I also think that something like this, it's more of a timeless experience than something like maybe just a concert, which I guess can also feel timeless. But I think that when the metaphysical dust settles, if you have the inclination to write, you write about it. And if you don't, you don't, because your photos themselves stand on their own. They don't need words. And
right.
And I can even say vice versa with your writing. Your writing is so visual in how you write. And I love your photos and I want them in the article, but your words stand on their own too, I guess is the point I'm making. So the combination of both is cool, but in your photos this year though, they're really, really spectacular. And I'm on Instagram, and every time I see one, I like that. I like that. I like that. It's easy to do. I mean, they're just stunning, each one of them.
Well, it is really funny. One of the funny experiences that Greta and I were amused at was that when I put my photos on social media, for the first time ever, established names in Burning Man photography noticed them. And I thought, well, that's terrific for one. I mean, obviously, I was very grateful, but it was kind of funny. I'm like, I have been doing this for a little while now, and finally, but to your point, I am doing better work, and it is a little more easy to notice, I feel like, than in the past. But it was, it was just gratifying. It really was. I'm like, oh, thank you, finally.
Anytime you can be acknowledged by your peers in any setting is gratifying, I think. I think it's just nice. It's nice to be recognized or acknowledged. And for you, it's deserved. I mean, you're doing work on the level of some of the best out there when it comes to Burning Man.
Hi, everybody. This is Fred Penner, and you are listening to Galaxy Tenants.
I want to talk about 2022's Burning Man experience for you coming out
Yes.
of the pandemic, because I know last time we spoke, it was in the middle of the pandemic and it was just kind of strange times. And we left off talking about whether or not the event would happen and in what capacity. When it did come back, when everything did return, what did that feel like? What did that look like on the ground?
Absolutely enthralling. So this was 22 was my 17th year of going. And after that many years, I always in the back of my head wonder when I pull into the desert for the first time again, is it going to still feel like I went the first time? And am I still going to have that same level of excitement and the element of wonder that I had originally? And the answer was yes. I mean, that's the thing about it. Even after days of rain, we would just sit on the deck of our pirate ship that couldn't move in the desert this year because of the rain. And you just scan the skyline of the city itself at night, and it just fills you with awe and wonder. And I feel like a lot of people coming back in 2022, there was just like this overwhelming sense of anticipation in terms of how fast the tickets went, how hard it was to get one, how long, even if you were early entry, how long the lines were before the gate even opened. There was just like this sense of anticipation of just wanting to get back and just to know that we hadn't lost what we were afraid of losing forever because of the pandemic. And then when you just saw all the art, all the crazy costumes, and all the beautiful structures that were being built, it definitely took my breath away, even after, at that point, 17 years.
I try to explain to people that visual of looking out over the playa at night, standing on, say, Esplanade, kind of looking out at night, and the volume of stimuli, there is nothing like it. I've never experienced anything like the playa at night in my entire life. It's the most stimulating thing I've ever seen. Explosions, lasers, pirate ships, dragons, fire, chaos, just pure chaos. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Yes. I feel like one of the things that I took away from 2022 was that it was a reminder that at its heart, what's best about it is about how it does create community across different boundaries of culture and income and geography. And it is a reminder that in our culture that is so splintered and so fractured that you can go to an event like Burning Man and you can see the possibilities. You can see how people can set aside differences and build something together that is both beautiful and enthralling that we can all equally experience.
I think it's a beautiful picture you paint. And I would wonder what happened last year. Why did so many people fall off the wagon? What, was, was it the heat? What the fuck happened? Because now if we look at the ticketing situation in 2023, I mean, you could almost find tickets on the ground, and camps were missing people, and they were struggling to get their projects funded and built, and the excitement had seemed to be taken out of a big part of the experience. And so I just wonder what the fuck happened out there.
uh, well, it's something that I've thought about myself, and Brett and I have talked about with other people. So I feel that it was probably a combination of things. First of all, whatever took place in the difference between ticketing in 2022 and 2023 was probably not as big of a deal as it was looking like. So, because yes, tickets were available, they didn't let Phil Lesh play. What can I tell you?
No, I mean, come on, tickets. There were tickets for like $100 in some
but
cases.
here's the thing, though: the population on the ground this year was still 75,000 people.
Yeah, because people got tickets for $100 in Reno in a fucking bathroom of a gas station.
You make it sound so romantic, Justin. I'm blushing over here.
Oh, shit.
But here's the thing. Yes, people did get in with cheap tickets, but it wasn't quite as being able to find them on the ground. There were ticket holders. I do feel like bots are involved with Burning Man ticketing now, that the numbers, they're buying in bulk, and they're buying in bulk with the anticipation that they're going to have this incredible resale value, which they clearly did not have this year. So I feel like that's a factor. I feel like there were some people that went through the heat and the windstorms of last year and realized this is pretty serious shit when you throw yourself out in the middle of a desert. And I better think twice about whether I want to put myself through that again. And so there was some of that involved for sure.
I mean, last year knocked off like 20-year burners. It knocked off Camp Leeds. It seemed that, I don't know if it was just the heat or what it was, but it really seemed to change the dynamic of burners' desire to get there. And I saw you reference whether or not you would be attending again. And I know there's some things with your jobs that might make it difficult to attend, but it seems like something changed where people are rethinking going to Black Rock City.
Well, I mean, in our case, it's not related to whether we're too tired and worn out to do it anymore, because the enthusiasm is still there. We really do have situations regarding being in education and that being the beginning of the school year. The people that run our schools hate us going that time of year for good reason. And so there's always been that push and pull for us. It has gotten more intense, I feel like, since lockdown has passed, that there is more pressure on school administrators, there's more pressure on teachers, and we're getting that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry you're getting that. I know it's got to be the craziest time of year, and I know how much both of those things mean to you.
This is something that Greta and I have talked about too, in the sense that, if we were telling our work that we were going away for 2 weeks for a yoga retreat, there might be a little bit different push and pull. You know what I'm saying? Like, they wouldn't be pushing so hard if we were like, we're going to have this Zen, but the thing is that Burning Man for us is our Zen.
And you do nude yoga there every morning. So it is a yoga retreat.
Well, I don't want to scare people, which what would happen. But
it's just a perspective thing for them. They just think that maybe Burning Man isn't something that's worth missing a week of work.
It's not as worth it.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I think again, it goes back to that perception of Burning Man versus the reality of Burning Man. And that's part of that perception kind of problem, in the sense that the school administrator is thinking to themselves, well, yeah, they're going to go get naked and do drugs and run around the desert.
Fuck, that sounds great.
It sounds fun, but it's not what I go to.
I think that people don't get that this is like a functional city with like parents and kids and doctors. There's a marathon people are running. I mean, for all of the unfiltered creativity that's pouring out in the playa, there's so much productivity among people who are not completely intoxicated.
Right. And I do feel like what happened in 23, part of it is that for many of us, it was a 2-year layoff from the last time we went. There were some renegade burners that went in the COVID years, but
you're saying in 2022.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about in terms of why there were so many more tickets available in 2023.
I see.
What happened was those people, like, we all rushed to get into the city in 2022 with a 2-year layoff. And so I feel like part of what that was is we came back to a year that was a really difficult year physically because of the conditions of the dust storms. And I think one day it got up to 114. But that, in addition to like not having gone for 2 years, is your body literally has to remember how to be there, how much water you need to consume in a day, how much food, how much salt, even, your body has to consume in order to survive. I mean, the irony for Greta and I was that physically we did probably the best we'd ever done since going to Burning Man. You know, we had hydration tablets. We were making sure we were staying fed, that we weren't skipping meals, and that our camelbacks were full of water whenever we went on a outing. So for us, that was the best year we probably ever had. But if it's been a couple of years, like those are the types of things that you have to remember.
Sure.
And I feel like that when people came back in 2022, the tickets got bought up immediately. But then there was this kind of reevaluative process that took place in their minds where it's just kind of like, oh, you know, am I ready to pick up this torch and keep doing it on a regular basis? And I feel like that there were people that just needed a year off even.
Let's jump to 2023. Andrew, tell me the story of what happened at Burning Man 2023. Did you guys use the ship as an ark?
Well, you know, what was funny about it is all our cars were grounded, you know, so it became more of just kind of like a ship at port, literally, because there was a big body of water right underneath it. So I've never gone to Burning Man where I've heard so many different perspectives. Like, I don't think anybody came out with the same story from Burning Man this year, which was really interesting to me. I mean, there were people coming out saying this was the best year they've ever had in their lives, like never experienced any difficulties whatsoever. And then there were people that lost their tents, you know, and
it almost sounds like a defense mechanism, though, to come out saying, oh my gosh, just incredible. Nothing went wrong. It's like,
nothing
you know,
went wrong, you know,
and
and I was like,
pure bliss.
And you know what? For 5 days, it was the best conditions that Burning Man has ever seen since I've started going in 2002.
What days
Daytime
were those?
temperatures were in the mid 80s. A couple of days they were in the upper 70s as a high.
So that's like gates to the beginning of the weekend was when the rain came?
So the rain hit on Friday, which is traditionally like the beginning of the buildup of like when it's at its most is usually starting on Friday.
Describe what it looked like standing there as the rain was falling and what you were thinking.
Well, it was raining overnight. So it started raining in the afternoon and it was very light. That was kind of a crazy moment too, because a lot of us didn't even know that a big storm was coming. Obviously, there were plenty of people that did, but when we go there, we do not have phone contact. We do not have email. We don't have Wi-Fi. Our phones don't connect. We barely can get a text message out if we're lucky. And so the windstorm came in on Thursday. So there was a windstorm all day Thursday, which wasn't unusual. And then Friday, it started to drizzle. And I had a mission that I had to complete before the rains came. And Greta and I started on our bikes, and people are yelling at us like, turn around, don't go out, the storm is coming. And there's two friends, Ren and Brandy, from my days when I lived in Jackson Hole, and I hadn't seen them since 2009 when I left. And I was bound and determined. I wanted to at least see them, give them a hug, at least before having to turn around. And they were on the way other side of the city. So we hauled ass as fast as we could, try and beat the rain. We came back. I mean, I got the hugs. We did the selfie together. It was a beautiful moment. And I'm just grateful that Greta was happy to just throw ourselves out there, because it could have started dumping at any time and we would have been stuck right where we were. But we made it back to camp. And it was then when we made it back to camp that the heavens just unleashed. We had to hunker down. We went to bed early that night, and it was just pounding rain on the tent all night long. I told Red, I'm like, oh crap, I think Burning Man is over. So that's what it felt like. Now, I know in retrospect, there were plenty of people that didn't shelter in place, that didn't hunker down, but we did. Our tent was in the middle of a frog pond all of a sudden. We have a pretty expensive canvas Kodiak tent that holds up. They kept all the water out, but it was right there in the middle of a pond all of a sudden. Moving around for us was physically difficult. We did slap on trash bags and duct tape them to our feet so that we could walk around, but just going to the porta potty for us was way more of an adventure than I wanted to go through.
Did they end up closing and locking the porta potties because of the lack of ability to service them?
No. So what was kind of amazing about it was that they were not able to service them for 2.5 days. They held up remarkably well. I mean, now, when I say that, you also have to picture in your mind that there were 3 inches of mud on the floor of every porta potty, that doors couldn't close anymore. As a matter of fact, some doors came off their hinges. Like, I mean, it looked bad. My wife likes to tell the story about how when she first stepped into the porta potties, that she noticed that there were these little like mounds, like miniature little ant hills, because people circling around in the space created like this little mound of mud in the middle of the floor.
God, that
But
sounds appealing.
oh, I know. I mean, so that's the thing. I mean, like, did we want to party in that situation? No. It was kind of like we were consuming just enough water and food to get by. We were hunkering down. I mean, if you lived in an RV, that's the thing about it too, is that the reason why there were so many different experiences of the rain was because so many people's living situations were different. If you lived in an RV, you were probably going to be a little better off than someone who was in a tent. If you were a part of a theme camp that was supportive and had infrastructure, you were probably going to have a better experience and feel a little more free than someone else. The point that I think that I come away with is that through it all, regardless of what different people's experiences were, if someone were to tell me that it was their best year ever and they didn't experience any difficulty, I would say, I am so happy for you. I am glad that was your experience. But what I feel like the bigger takeaway than us trying to hash out whose experience was what is the fact that what I saw were a lot of people coming together when they needed to. We had neighbors who lost their tents and lost their clothes because of inches of rainwater and mud. And there were people with RVs and extra costumes and extra clothes that were like, I have a place for you to sleep. We have clothes that you could wear. We have food. We have supplies. Anybody who needed that help, I felt like there was at least an attempt for the community to rally. That's what I feel like should be the takeaway from this year, is that who cares if Diplo and Chris Rock walked out of the desert early? They didn't have to be responsible for their own shit. So great. They needed to get out. They had shows to get to. I understand. But those of us that were left behind and had to make do under difficult circumstances came together.
How was cleanup and Exodus?
So I have not seen an official MOOP map. So for listeners who don't understand what that is, MOOP is an acronym for Matter Out of Place. And each camp is responsible to try to clean up even the tiniest cigarette butt left behind. And so they create a map called a MOOP map where they go through volunteers. It's mostly volunteers that will do a sweep of every square inch and clean up what's left behind. And I am quite sure there was a bigger mess to clean up this year. I don't doubt it from every corner. We only had a 10 by 10 tent space, but even just like little bits of fabric from the tent that just got buried underneath the mud that you can't pull up after it's dried. It made cleaning up a much harder experience. Now, what I can say about Exodus is always difficult. If you leave the day after the man burns, or if you leave the day after the temple burns, they're consecutive days, and they're the last 2 days of the festival. There's always an insane line. The irony is, though, that the longer lines happened earlier because the events like the man burn and the temple burn got pushed to the beginning of the next week, but people still had to leave. So by the time we headed out, it wasn't so bad. Exodus seemed to be spread out over a larger number of days than it usually is. So I feel like initially there was a big rush. I heard stories about how there was a 13-hour wait just to get to the road. But by the time we were heading out, it was more like a 3-hour wait, which is
beautiful.
Not bad at all.
Yeah, given the circumstances, that's incredible. Because that could be really bad. Yeah,
absolutely.
The last time we spoke, you mentioned that your parents were fearful on some level of you attending Burning Man with all the hippies and the heathens. And I wonder, 20 some odd years later, how do you talk to your folks about Burning Man?
Not much. It is kind of an interesting thing. My parents, well, my dad died in 2016.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But even then, there was, I feel like a grudgingly kind of acceptance of what I did, mostly because of the photographs that they saw me take. It actually helped them accept me going to Burning Man far more than anything. You know, when they saw some of the images that were coming out that I was bringing, they were like, okay, well, we don't like it. We still think it's a bunch of heathens running around naked, but he is taking these pretty pictures, so we'll let it go, kind of thing. And so I talk to my sister quite frequently about it. So my sister is fully on board. I think she gets it more than my parents did. So we don't talk about Burning Man directly. My sister shows my mom the photos, and she admires them and she likes them. That's cool. Kind of where we leave it.
If you didn't attend Burning Man, if you declined your friend's offer in 2001, where would you be now?
Not in Boulder, Colorado. I'll tell you that. I don't know. I feel like I would have been a pretty lost soul. I feel that I probably could have ended up in some pretty dark, difficult places, trying to push a stone up a hill that I couldn't push with being a Baptist minister. I feel that 2001 going to Burning Man saved my life. In the story that I wrote for Music Marauders, I gave the analogy of being born again, kind of thing. That's literally what happened to me. The imagery of me getting born again was so visceral because I had had my first LSD experience and I had jumped off the pirate ship. I had had this experience where like I was in the middle of a sandstorm at dusk and literally I could see all the molecules being connected, broken, like my hand would break apart into molecules, but was connected to all the other molecules. And I end up in this dance club that has a maze that you have to crawl through with false mirrors and false doors. And all of a sudden you're going down a slide down into this huge indoor dance club with lasers and 400 people and a DJ. And I looked on the wall behind me and there was a sculpture of a woman's legs spread apart and the slide came right from the middle. And I literally was born again in that moment. So there it was. If the symbolism wasn't any more plain, there it was.
Just literal.
Just so literal. Exactly.
That's so fucking beautiful.
I went into Burning Man, the Southern Baptist preacher, and 7 days later, my head had been blown open. My perspective of myself, of the world, of the universe was blown completely apart in the most beautiful way possible. Like finally, I kind of was beginning to understand what it meant to be human in a human community. And as beautiful as it was, remember, I was holding my hands to the steering wheel so hard that my knuckles were turning white. And in the back of my head, the only thing that was coming out was, oh, fuck, oh, fuck, oh, fuck, oh, fuck. What happens next? What do I do now? And I found my art, which was photography. I took one photo in 2002 that was of the temple burn, which is the last thing that happens. So I found my art. I found my family. That was the thing about it too, is I'm adopted. I'm an adopted kid. So the fact that I go to Burning Man, my head gets blown up, but I find my adopted family. Like this was a group of people that literally grabbed me, pulled me into their camp and said, camp with us for the rest of the week. And I've been with them for over 20 years. I found love. I found how to love. I got married there. I literally grew up through Burning Man. I mean, that was so crazy. So this past weekend, I had a friend of mine come visit from Wisconsin who was one of the original members of this camp that I'm a part of. And that's one of the things that we talk about is now that, we literally grew up through a festival, that we learn how to be with other people, that we learn how to accept difference, that we learn how to realize that what we look like and what we dress like is completely different from the people right next to us. And that's okay. All these things. And I hesitate to think where I would be if I had not gone to Burning Man, how small-minded my world would still be, like how little I would still know how to relate to others.
I love your story. I love your perspective. I love your work. I love that you contribute to Music Marauders and that you would give me this time to have this conversation and hear your perspective. And thank you for the first episode that you were on with me. And again, for coming on today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it so much.
This episode was produced by Jay Picard and edited by Carly Picard. The episode featured the songs Bending the Rules and Sono Mama by Shakti, courtesy of Abstract Logics, and our theme song was composed by Naryan Padmanabha.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hey, Justin, it's Andrew calling. So we made it out of the playa, and obviously, not everybody had the same experience with the rain. There were some people that thought it was just like a spring rain and like a little dance through a park. And I'm suspecting they were probably living in RVs other than tents like ourselves. And on the 3 o'clock sector, the whole 3 o'clock sector was a bog. But we got out yesterday finally, and they at the GSR pool, I'm hanging out at the pool and met Alex Gray and his wife. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to shoot him a link to the story that you guys published of mine. Maybe there's a silver lining in every cloud is all I'm saying. Sending love to you and Carly. We love you guys so much. Peas and carrots. That's my saying. Peas and carrots. Bye.